My aunt runs a salon in Sweden and wanted to settle in Dubai, so she bought a house there. While looking for salon and equipment, some person defrauded her of some 15,000 AED. Her friends suggested her that she should report it to police. Dubai police is very great, very helpful, and will resolve her case and will help her get her money back. My aunt and my whole family had heard great things about the police there, so she decided to do it. She went to the police station. She was redirected from one counter to other for 4 hours. She almost gave up, but then she was called to 4th floor. Please note that she was alone and does not know Arabic. There again, after a lot of waiting, she lost her patience. Some officer was coming to give the papers to her, so she took it directly from his hands and had a very frustrated look on her face. She realized she did something wrong and profusely apologized. Now the horror part starts. The officer became highly offended by it. He put her in prison for a day for this, accused her of fighting, abusing, throwing papers at his face, and whatnot. All senseless accusations. He did not report the fact that she was put in prison or the fact that she is a foreign national on the case. Highly shook after a day in prison, she again apologized. The officer asked her to sign a paper in Arabic saying, "Sign this and she is good to go." She complied. Remember this, it is important. Please note no one in our extended family has ever been to prison, and she did not have anything to eat as she is vegetarian and prison only had non-veg. Prison being prison had sounds of screaming and whatnot all the time. She went to an airport as per her scheduled flight, but was informed that there is some case pending so she cannot leave the country. She went to a few lawyers for the same and they told her that there is no case filed yet so they can't help. She went to the police station, so they told that they have registered a case. As guides by everyone, she again and again apologized to the officer and he said that he has forgiven her and it's all okay. It's others who are angry. He guided to go to public prosecutor to get it resolved. It took 15 days to reach to this stage. With public prosecutor, he asked the whole story and my aunt told her everything honestly. Prosecutor said this is not worthy of a case. The case does not say anything about prison or her being foreign national. He said he will have word with the officer and will get it cleared. Our whole family was happy. The next day officer was highly offended as to why did we tell the whole story, how dare she, and whatnot. The tone of talking changed. He was a different person altogether. Case went to trial. My aunt was given a fine. We accepted it and deposited the fine. 12 days. After the result, the prosecutor changed the punishment to increased fine, prison time and deportation, as told by embassy. We contested this in high court. The court did not accept the appeal. We have applied in Supreme Court, awaiting and hoping the appeal will be accepted. All this has taken 6 months of her life. She works day and night at her salon to earn money, which is simply burning in her stay and legal fee. She is not able to work/earn while she is there. She has 2 small kids studying in Sweden who she has not met in this while. On top of all this, she might have to go to prison for 3 months. If anyone can help, then please do. Really tough times for us. I stood in my kitchen staring out the window, my mind a million miles away. I couldn't take the tightness in my chest and the weight of what my husband had suggested to me. My husband David and I have been trying to have a baby for years, but our last visit to the hospital provided the final nails in the coffin after telling us that it wasn't ever going to happen. I was devastated, but my husband didn't seem too upset because he suggested we had options. I couldn't believe what he was asking of me, not only me but also my sister. When he first mentioned that we asked my sister to be a surrogate, it didn't come across as the worst idea. But when he suggested we do it the traditional way, it sent my blood running cold. A million thoughts ran through my head as I tried to make sense of what he said and wanted. Was he attracted to my sister all this time? Was he using this as a way to sleep with my sister quilt-free? I was furious, and when I said this to him, he didn't see the problem. Told me his ancestors have done it for centuries. I didn't answer him at first. I didn't trust myself to speak without breaking. It was as if David, the man I'd known and loved, was suddenly a stranger. It wasn't just the idea of surrogacy that upset me. It was the way he spoke about it like it was part of some long-forgotten tradition. He wasn't talking about clinics or doctors. He wanted Emily to conceive with him naturally. I couldn't wrap my head around it. My sister, with my husband, to give us the child I couldn't have? The thought made me sick. David had been calm, almost too calm when he explained it. He said it was the family's way, something his ancestors had always done to keep the bloodline strong. The more he talked, the more I felt like I didn't even know him anymore. It wasn't just old-fashioned, it was disturbing. I tried to talk to Emily, hoping she'd be as horrified as I was. At first, she thought it was a joke. But when I told her how serious David was, her face changed. She admitted that he'd already spoken to her about it. She had hoped he'd drop the idea if I wasn't on board. Now, we both knew it wasn't going away. Anger burned in me. How could David even suggest this? The thought of him with Emily was unbearable, but there was something else, too, something darker lurking underneath his words. I couldn't shake the feeling that there was more to his plan than just having a child. I started digging. I went through his things, looking for anything that might explain what was going on. That's when I found the old family records. At first, it seemed like harmless genealogy, but the deeper I looked, the stranger it got. There were symbols I didn't recognize, notes about bloodlines and fertility, and then I found something that chilled me to the bone, mentions of rituals, sacrifices, and offerings to some kind of ancient god. Suddenly, everything clicked into place. This wasn't about having a child. David wasn't just trying to keep the family line going, he was planning something far darker. My sister wasn't meant to just carry our baby. She was supposed to be a sacrifice, an offering to this old god his family had worshipped for generations. I felt sick. My mind raced as I pieced it all together. David had been planning this for years. His calm demeanor, and the talk of tradition, it was all a cover for something far more sinister. I realized I wasn't just fighting to stop an uncomfortable surrogacy arrangement. I was fighting for my sister's life. When I confronted him, he didn't deny it. He just looked at me with that same eerie calm, saying it was the only way to secure the family's future. Emily had to be the one. She was pure, perfect for the ritual. He spoke like it was already decided, like I had no say in the matter. The desperation in me turned to panic, a gnawing fear that was eating away at me. I had to protect Emily, but I wasn't sure how obsessed my husband was about all this and the lengths he could go to make it happen. Time was running out, and I knew that if I didn't stop him, I'd lose Emily. And if that happened, the consequences would be far worse than anything I could have imagined. The night of the ritual came. David had prepared everything, symbols drawn on the floor, candles flickering in strange, unnatural patterns. Emily stood off to the side, trembling, terrified of what was about to happen. I was shaking too, but not out of fear. I was ready. David had no idea how much I had learned, how far I had gone to turn this around. He thought I was beaten, that I had accepted his plan. He had no idea that while he was busy obsessing over his precious old ways, I had been finding something older, something stronger. As David began the chant, my heart pounded in my chest, but I stayed silent, watching him call on forces he didn't fully understand. He moved toward Emily, ready to start the final part of the ritual, but that's when I made my move. I spoke words he wasn't expecting, words I had learned from the darkest parts of those ancient texts. They weren't meant for me to say, but I had learned to twist the ritual, bend it to my own will. I had spent weeks preparing for this moment, memorizing everything I needed to make sure that he would be the one who paid the price. David froze as the energy in the room shifted. The symbols on the floor flickered, changing shape, twisting into something unfamiliar even to him. His confidence wavered, and for the first time, I saw fear in his eyes. He tried to finish the chant, but the words fell flat. "You don't understand what you're doing," he tried to shout. His control over the ritual was slipping. The power he'd summoned didn't care for tradition or purity. It was only looking for one thing, the perfect vessel. David gasped. His face twisted in shock. The ritual had shifted, and he was no longer the master of it. He tried to stand, but his body convulsed again, and he fell to his knees. His hands pressed against his belly as something inside him began to swell, pushing outward. The horrifying realization dawned on him: the life he had intended for my sister was now growing inside him. I watched as his belly expanded, stretching his skin tight. The weight of it grew, heavy and undeniable. He looked up at me, his face pale, desperate for a way out, but there was none. The spell had made its choice. David, the man so obsessed with controlling his bloodline, was now the one carrying it. The look of terror on his face was all I needed to know. He understood, and there was no escaping it. He was pregnant. 9 months later, David was a shadow of the man he used to be. His once proud posture had crumbled under the weight of his massive, swollen belly, his skin stretched tight and marked with deep stretch marks. His feet were constantly swollen, and his face, once stern, was now puffy and exhausted from sleepless nights of cramps, back pain, and the relentless discomfort of carrying life inside him. He had gone through every stage of pregnancy, morning sickness that left him. Heaving, strange cravings, and the unpredictable mood swings that left him either weeping or raging at the smallest things. His body ached in ways he never imagined, his back hunched as he waddled through the house, barely able to move with the burden of his own making. The reality of pregnancy had shattered any last trace of his arrogance, leaving him humbled and broken.